Silence in an apartment that used to ring with Chopin, and laughter is never a mercy. Usually, it means Daisy has gone to bed without asking for a story, the kind of heavy quiet that comes when a 7-year-old learns not to need her mother anymore. But tonight, the silence in my living room is born of something I've perfected over 6 months, the art of erasing myself one drink at a time. The December storm rattling my loose window pane mocks the numbness I've worked so hard to achieve, each gust threatening to wake something I drowned 3 bottles ago. I'm lying on the sofa with my cheek pressed against the scratchy upholstery, my hands still loosely curled around the stem of an empty wine glass. Through the window, I can hear the muffled chaos of New York, sirens wailing down Amsterdam Avenue, the hiss of bus brakes, voices in languages I don't speak anymore. I'm not sleeping. I'm hovering in that gray space between unconsciousness and awareness, willing myself not to surface. The glass has been empty for 17 minutes. That's 16 minutes longer than I usually wait before refilling it. I feel the blanket being draped over my shoulders, small hands tucking the fabric around me with a competence that shatters what's left of my heart. A gesture too gentle for fingers that should be sticky with juice and clumsy with childhood. To the school administrators who still accept my late tuition payments, to the few former colleagues who still send holiday cards I can't bear to open, to the social worker whose number sits folded in my purse like a loaded gun, I'm holding it together. Frida Snowden, 33-year-old widow with a music degree from Juilliard, a daughter in private school, and a tragedy that makes me sympathetic rather than suspicious. They see the honey blonde hair I still manage to wash most mornings, the apologetic smile I've perfected. They don't see the woman who sold her wedding ring to pay Marco Vane. They don't see the bank statements I no longer open, or the eviction notice I've hidden under the piano bench. The floorboards creak as Daisy moves across the room, a sound so familiar I can map her path without opening my eyes. 6 steps to the coat hooks, pause to reach the top toggle, shuffle to the door. My stomach twists with something sharper than the wine can dull. I know exactly what those sounds mean. My baby is leaving. Again. My 7-year-old daughter is putting on her coat and walking out into a December night because I can't be trusted to stay conscious, can't be trusted to remember dinner, can't be trusted with anything that matters. I should get up. I should call out. I should be the mother I promised to be when they placed that perfect screaming infant in my arms 7 years ago. But moving means acknowledging how the room spins even lying down. Moving means seeing the disappointment in Daisy's eyes, the fear, the resignation. Moving means facing the woman I've become. So I lie still and count my daughter's footsteps. 4 steps to the door. Click of the lock. Whisper of hinges that need oil. Silence. I've learned to measure my failures in sounds, the piano that hasn't been played since Marcus's funeral, the phone calls I let go to voicemail, the footsteps of a child who has learned to parent herself. While other mothers count their children's achievements, I count the ways I'm destroying the only good thing I have left. I love Daisy. God, I love her with a ferocity that makes my chest ache even through the chemical fog. I love the way she still draws pictures of the 3 of us, Mama, Daddy, and her, even though Daddy's heart exploded 18 months ago while conducting at Lincoln Center, right there on stage with the whole city watching. I love how she inherited Marcus's dark curls and my stubborn chin. I love my daughter enough to know I'm failing her. I see the truth every morning in the bathroom mirror, in the moments before I make it to the kitchen and the bottles under the sink. I see the hollow cheeks and the eyes that look like bruises. I recognize the woman staring back at me because I saw that same expression on my own mother's face 20 years ago, right before the cancer took her. The difference is, my mother didn't have a choice about dying. I'm choosing it, one glass at a time. I pull the blanket tighter around myself, the blue one Daisy tucked around me with hands that should be careless and sticky, not careful and ancient. My apartment smells like spilled wine and the Chinese takeout I forgot to eat 3 days ago. Underneath it all is the ghost of my old perfume, the Chanel No. 5 that Marcus used to kiss off my neck before concerts. That woman, the pianist who wore silk and played for presidents, who laughed loud and loved louder, is gone. In her place is this creature on the sofa, this hollow thing that looks like Frida Snowden but lost the right to the name when I took the first payment from Marco Vane, when I let him store his inventory in Daisy's closet, when I accepted the bottles he brought in exchange for turning blind eyes. The wine glass slips from my fingers and thuds onto the carpet, a sound I barely register. I know I should check if it broke. I know I should get up and make sure Daisy locked the door behind her. I know I should be better, do better, be the mother she deserves. But knowing and doing are separated by an ocean I can't cross anymore. So I do what I do best now. Nothing. I close my eyes and let the gray pull me under, where I don't have to see my daughter's coat disappearing down the hallway. Where I don't have to count the ways I've failed. Where I don't have to be Frida Snowden, fallen pianist and worse mother, who once had everything and poured it all down her throat one bottle at a time. The storm rattles the window. The radiator clanks. The clock ticks. And somewhere in this city, this brutal, beautiful New York that swallowed my husband and is slowly swallowing me, my 7-year-old daughter walks alone through the December cold with a letter in her pocket, asking a stranger for the one thing I can't give her. Help. The morning came the way it always did now, violent and unwanted, dragging me from the gray fog into the harsh light of consequence. My mouth tasted like pennies and regret. The empty bottle on the coffee table mocked me with its label still facing up, a cheerful California vineyard, sun-drenched grapes, lies about joy. I didn't remember finishing it. I never remembered anymore. Daisy was already awake. I could hear her in the kitchen, the careful clink of a bowl, the whisper of cereal pouring. 7 years old and she'd learned to move through our apartment like a ghost, minimizing her presence so she wouldn't wake the monster on the sofa. The thought made bile rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down with the shame. Marcus used to bring me coffee in bed. Real coffee, not the instant powder we had now, brewed in the French press he'd bought in Montreal. He'd kiss my temple and whisper Chopin measures against my skin until I laughed and pulled him back under the covers. That man, my husband, my love, the father who would have died before letting Daisy pour her own breakfast, was 18 months in the ground at Woodlawn Cemetery. And I was here, trying to remember if I'd locked the door last night. I pushed myself upright and the room tilted. 3 deep breaths. Count the piano keys from memory. Find the center. This was what my therapist had taught me before I stopped going, before the copays became impossible and the sessions became accusations I couldn't face. The knock came at 9:47 a.m. I knew because the kitchen clock, the one good thing we had left, chimed the quarter hour just as knuckles hit wood. 3 sharp raps. Not the landlord's impatient hammering. Not the mailman's courtesy tap. Marco Vane knocked like he owned the place. Because in every way that mattered, he did. I made myself stand, made myself walk to the door, made myself check the peephole even though I knew what I'd see. Marco's face filled the fisheye lens, handsome in that predatory way that had fooled me 6 months ago when I was desperate and he was offering solutions. The vulture, they called him in the neighborhood. I understood why now. Frida. His voice through the door was oil-slick smooth. I can hear you breathing, sweetheart. Open up. My hand went to the locks, 3 of them, installed by Marcus after a break-in 2 buildings over, but I couldn't make myself turn them. Behind me, Daisy's cereal spoon stopped clinking. She was listening. She always listened. I'm not feeling well, I called out, hating the tremor in my voice. Then it's good I brought medicine. A pause, heavy with meaning. We need to discuss your storage fee. And the late payment. Plus interest. Interest. The word landed like a fist. The storage fee, $200 a month for letting him keep merchandise, I pretended was legal in the back of Daisy's closet. The loan, $3,000 I'd borrowed to keep the lights on, ballooned to 8 with his arithmetic. The late payment, last month's rent I'd promised him instead of my landlord. I was drowning in numbers I couldn't pay with skills I no longer had. I'll have it Friday, I lied. You said that last week. And the week before. His knuckle rapped the door again, softer this time, which somehow made it worse. Open the door, Frida. Or I'll use my key. My key. The spare I'd given him in August, when gratitude and wine had convinced me he was helping. When I still believed I could control this. I opened the door 6 inches, keeping the chain engaged. Marco smiled at me through the gap, and I saw my reflection in his cold eyes, a woman in a stained robe with unbrushed hair and the shakes starting in her hands. A woman who used to play Carnegie Hall. There's my girl, he said, and slid a brown paper bag through the opening. It clinked. 2 bottles of red, the cheap kind that burned going down and erased everything after. Consider it an advance on Friday. We'll talk about the rest later. He was gone before I could refuse, his footsteps echoing down the stairwell like a countdown. I stood holding the bag, feeling its weight, feeling Daisy's eyes on my back from the kitchen doorway. I could throw it away. I could pour it out. I could be the mother she needed. Instead, I closed the door, turned all 3 locks, and walked to the kitchen cabinet where I kept the wine glasses. Mama. Daisy's voice was small. She was wearing her school uniform, the plaid jumper I'd forgotten to wash. Can I go to Emma's house after school? Emma lived 3 floors down with her grandmother. It was safe. It was away from me. Of course, baby. I pulled a glass down with shaking hands. Have fun. She watched me for a long moment with those dark eyes that saw too much, understood too much. Then she picked up her backpack, the pink one with the unicorn Marcus had bought her last birthday, and headed for the door. I love you, Mama. The words hit me like a bullet. I love you too, Daisy girl. So much. She nodded like she believed me, or like she wanted to, and slipped out into the December morning. I was opening the first bottle before I heard her footsteps fade. 4 blocks south, Daisy Snowden buttoned her too thin coat against the wind and pulled a piece of pink construction paper from her backpack. She'd written it in art class yesterday while Miss Rodriguez talked about Christmas wishes. The other kids had asked Santa for toys and games and puppies. Daisy had asked for something impossible. She'd seen the box 3 days ago on her way home from Emma's. 2 men in suits, the kind with scary quiet faces that made people cross the street, had been putting an envelope in a metal box mounted on the brick wall in the alley behind Giuseppe's Pizza. The box was dented and old, but someone had painted a snowflake on it years ago. It was faded now, barely visible, but Daisy knew what it meant. Grown-ups lied about Santa. She knew that. But the snowflake was proof they were wrong. Why else would men in suits use a special box in a secret alley? They were Santa's helpers. They had to be. Daisy checked that no one was watching. The morning rush had emptied the street, and slipped into the alley. The box was higher than she remembered. She had to stand on an overturned milk crate to reach the slot. The letter slid through with a whisper. Please, she whispered to the snowflake, to Santa, to anyone who might be listening. Please help my mama. I'll be good forever. I promise. The wind picked up, scattering newspapers down the alley. Daisy climbed down from the crate and ran towards school, her breath making clouds in the cold. Inside the box, her letter settled on top of an envelope containing $20,000 in cash and GPS coordinates for a shipment of stolen pharmaceuticals. Both were marked for pickup by Niccolò Calabresi's courier at noon. 3 miles north in a penthouse that overlooked Central Park like a throne, the man who made grown men weep was about to have his Wednesday ruined by pink construction paper and a child's belief in magic. The gears of the underworld, greased with blood and money, began turning toward a different kind of miracle. Niccolò Calabresi was not a man who believed in accidents. In his world, every outcome was engineered, every variable controlled, every loose end tied off with piano wire or cement. So when his courier Paolo arrived at the penthouse with the weekly pickup and placed a piece of pink construction paper on his desk alongside the expected envelope of cash, Niccolò's first instinct was to assume it was a message. A taunt from a rival family. Some kind of code. Then he read it. Dear Santa, my mom drinks every night, help her. The handwriting was uneven, each letter formed with the careful deliberation of a child who was still learning to make the curves connect. There were small drawings in the margins, a stick figure woman holding what might have been a bottle, a smaller stick figure with tears, a heart colored in with green crayon. Paolo shifted his weight by the door. Boss, I don't know how it got in the drop. The location wasn't compromised. I checked the perimeter, pulled the camera footage. Just some kid, maybe 7, 8 years old. She came alone. Niccolò's jaw tightened. A child. A little girl who thought a mafia dead drop was a mailbox to the North Pole. The absurdity of it should have been amusing. Instead, it carved something open in his chest that he'd welded shut 20 years ago. Find her, he said quietly. Paolo knew better than to question. Yes, boss. It took 4 hours. 4 hours of pulling surveillance footage from every camera within 3 blocks of the drop. 4 hours of running facial recognition through the databases of every school in the borough. 4 hours of Nicolo sitting at his desk, that pink letter smoothed flat in front of him, reading it over and over like it was evidence in a trial he couldn't afford to lose. By 4 p.m., he had a name. Daisy Snowden. 7 years old. Student at PS 87. Address, 247, West 71st Street, Apartment 4B. By 5 p.m., he was parked across the street in a black Mercedes with tinted windows, watching the building's entrance like a man on a stakeout. Which, technically, he was. He told himself he just wanted to verify the situation. Confirm that intervention was necessary. He'd built an empire on measured responses, calculated risks. This was just another problem to assess and solve. Then he saw her. The woman stumbled out of the building entrance at 5:17 p.m., and Nicolo knew immediately she was the mother. She had the same honey blonde hair as the little girl in the footage, though hers was unwashed and tangled. She wore a coat that had been expensive once, years ago, now stained and missing buttons. She moved with the careful deliberation of someone who was drunk but trying very hard not to show it. A man followed her out. Tall, sharp-featured, wearing a leather jacket that screamed mid-level predator. He caught up to her in 3 strides, grabbed her elbow, spun her around. Nicolo couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. The man's face too close to hers. Her attempt to pull away. His grip tightening. Nicolo's hand moved to the door handle. The man shoved something into the woman's coat pocket, money or drugs, Nicolo couldn't tell from this distance, and leaned in to whisper something that made her flinch. Then he walked away, leaving her standing alone on the sidewalk with her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her pieces together. She stood there for a long moment, swaying slightly, before turning back toward the building. She took 2 steps, stopped, and braced herself against the brick wall. Her shoulders shook. Crying or laughing or both, Nicolo couldn't tell. But he could tell she was breaking. The memory hit him without warning, the way they always did. His mother, Maria Calabrese, standing in their kitchen in the Bronx tenement. He was 8 years old, the same age as the girl with the pink letter. His mother was holding onto the counter, her knuckles white, her whole body trembling. His uncle Tomas was at the door, holding a bottle of something clear that smelled like gasoline and death. Just one more, Maria. To steady your hands. And his mother, his beautiful mother who used to sing while she cooked, who braided his sister's hair and called him El Miocor, his mother had reached for that bottle like it was the only thing keeping her alive. It had kept her alive for 3 more years. 3 years of watching her disappear into the fog, 3 years of finding her passed out on the floor, 3 years of his uncle bringing bottles and taking payments. Nicolo was too young to understand but old enough to hate. He'd been 12 when she died. Liver failure, the doctors said. Addiction, the priest whispered. Tomas didn't come to the funeral. Nicolo had spent the next 20 years making sure his uncle's death was neither quick nor painless. Across the street, Frida Snowden pushed herself away from the wall and disappeared back into the building. Nicolo sat in the Mercedes, his hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make the leather creak, and made a decision that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the 8-year-old boy who'd written his own letter once. Not to Santa. To God. God hadn't answered. But Nicolo Calabrese wasn't God. He was something better equipped for miracles in a city that ate the weak and forgot the desperate. He pulled out his phone and dialed his consigliere. Luca, he said quietly. I need you to find out everything about a loan shark working the Upper West Side. Tall, Italian, leather jacket. Probably mid-level. Preys on desperate women. Sure, boss. What did he do? Nicolo looked at the building entrance, at the broken woman who just walked through it, at the window 4 floors up where a 7-year-old girl was probably making her own dinner. He made a mistake, Nicolo said. He touched something that belongs to me now. He ended the call and settled in to watch. The little girl's light came on at 6:03 p.m. 4th floor, corner window, pink curtains visible through the glass. Nicolo didn't believe in Santa Claus or miracles or redemption. But he believed in debts. And someone was about to pay his mother's, 20 years too late. Marco the Vulture Vane received the invitation at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, delivered in the traditional way. 3 of his collection enforcers dumped unconscious on the sidewalk outside his apartment in Hell's Kitchen, their hands zip-tied behind their backs and their faces rearranged just enough to send a message without killing the messengers. The note pinned to the largest one's chest was handwritten on expensive cardstock in precise block letters. We need to discuss your business practices. Come alone. A friend. The address listed was a warehouse in Red Hook that Marco knew belonged to the Calabrese family. Which meant this wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. He went alone because he wasn't suicidal, and he went armed because he wasn't stupid. The warehouse was dark except for a single light hanging over a metal chair in the center of the concrete floor. Nicolo Calabrese stood in the shadows beyond the light's reach, but Marco could see his outline, the broad shoulders, the stillness that marked apex predators. Mr. Vane. The voice was quiet, almost conversational. Thank you for coming. Didn't know I had a choice. You don't. Nicolo stepped into the light, and Marco's hand instinctively moved toward his concealed weapon before survival instinct froze it in place. I'm going to make this very simple. You have a client. Frida Snowden. 247, West 71st Street. Marco's mind raced through the implications. The Calabrese family didn't care about small-time marks. Unless this woman was connected. Unless she was someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone's. She's nobody to me, Nicolo continued, reading his thoughts. But you're going to forget she exists. Her debt is cleared. You're going to remove whatever inventory you have stored in her apartment. You're going to never contact her again. You're going to leave that entire block alone. With all due respect, Marco started. I'm not asking for respect. I'm purchasing compliance. Nicolo nodded to someone in the shadows. A briefcase appeared, placed on the floor between them. 50,000. That covers her debt, your lost revenue, and your inconvenience. Take it and walk away. Marco stared at the briefcase. 50,000 for a junkie who owed him 8? The math didn't compute unless. She's under your protection now, Marco said slowly, understanding crystallizing. She doesn't know that yet. And you're going to keep it that way. If I hear you've been within 3 blocks of her apartment, if I hear you've mentioned her name, if I even suspect you've looked in her direction, I will personally ensure your body is never found. Are we clear? Marco picked up the briefcase. He wasn't stupid enough to count it in front of a Calabrese. Crystal. Good. Oh, and Marco. Nicolo's voice dropped to something colder. I know about the storage arrangement. The pharmaceuticals in the closet. If anything happens to that woman or her daughter because of what you left in their home, because some rival comes looking for your product, because of any fallout from your business, I will hold you personally responsible. Clean it up. Tonight. Marco was halfway to the door when Nicolo spoke again. And Marco? Consider this your retirement from the collection business on the Upper West Side. I've purchased your territory. Find somewhere else to hunt. By 4 a.m., Marco's men were clearing the last box from Daisy's closet. By 5 a.m., every dealer and loan shark who worked for the Vulture had received word. The blocks surrounding West 71st were now no-go zones. By 6 a.m., Marco was on a bus to Philadelphia, deciding that New York had become suddenly unhealthy. I woke up at 8 a.m. to someone knocking on my door. Not Marco's possessive rap. This was professional, courteous, almost apologetic. I dragged myself off the couch, I'd passed out there again, and stumbled to the peephole. A woman in a navy blue suit stood in the hallway, holding a tablet and what looked like a medical bag. I opened the door the width of the chain. I didn't call anyone. Mrs. Snowden, my name is Dr. Nina Reeves. I'm from Serenity Heights Recovery Center. May I come in? The words didn't make sense. Recovery center? I hadn't applied anywhere. Couldn't afford to apply anywhere. There's been a mistake. No mistake. Your debt has been cleared. Your slot has been secured. There's a car waiting downstairs. She held up the tablet, showing me a document with my name at the top. Paid in full. All fees covered. 30-day residential program. You're expected at the facility in an hour. My brain couldn't process it. I don't understand. Who? A benefactor who wishes to remain anonymous. They've also arranged for your daughter's care during your treatment. She pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it through the gap. This is the agreement. It's straightforward. You enter treatment today, you complete the program, and everything is handled. Rent, utilities, your daughter's needs. All of it. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Legal documents. Care arrangements for Daisy with a vetted family service. Paid in full. Non-negotiable. And at the bottom, a single handwritten line, someone got your letter. Time to get better. The pink construction paper. Daisy's letter to Santa. This isn't real, I whispered. The car is waiting, Mrs. Snowden. Your daughter is at school. She'll be picked up this afternoon and taken to a safe placement. You can call her every evening. But you need to decide now. I looked at the woman in the navy suit, at the document in my hands, at the apartment behind me that smelled like failure and spilled wine. I thought about Daisy's face when she tucked the blanket around me. I thought about Marco's grip on my elbow. I thought about the bottles under the sink calling my name. Someone had paid. Someone had seen. Someone was offering me a way out of the hell I'd built. I need to pack. We'll provide everything you need. You just need to come. I grabbed my phone and my wallet. I didn't look back at the apartment. Looking back would mean seeing all the reasons I should stay, all the reasons I'd fail, all the reasons this wouldn't work. Dr. Reeves guided me downstairs to a black car with tinted windows. As we pulled away from the curb, I saw my building getting smaller in the rearview mirror. Somewhere in this city, someone was watching. Someone who'd read my daughter's letter and decided we were worth saving. I didn't know who. But I was terrified they'd realize their mistake before I got sober enough to deserve it. The first 3 days, I wanted to die. Not metaphorically. Not dramatically. I genuinely, desperately wanted to stop existing because existing meant feeling everything I'd been drowning for 18 months. The withdrawal hit like a freight train, shaking so hard my teeth chattered, stomach cramping until I couldn't stand, skin feeling like it was crawling off my bones. I vomited until there was nothing left and then kept vomiting. The nurses at Serenity Heights held my hair back and spoke in soft voices I couldn't process through the screaming in my head. Dr. Reeves checked on me every 4 hours. This is your body healing, she said while I lay curled on the bathroom floor. It's going to hurt before it gets better. I wanted to tell her that hurt was an inadequate word for this particular circle of hell, but speaking required energy I didn't have. So I shook and sweated and counted tiles on the ceiling, 144 white squares, each one a second I had to survive. On day 4, the physical symptoms started to ease. That's when the emotional ones arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Grief for Marcus that I'd been drowning instead of processing. Guilt for Daisy sharp enough to cut. Shame that sat in my chest like a stone. The therapist they assigned me, Dr. Patterson, had kind eyes and no patience for my self-pity. You're here, she said during our first session. That's the hardest part. You chose to get better. Someone chose for me, I corrected. You walked through that door. You could have said no. Could I have? With Daisy's letter hanging over me like judgment? With the promise of a way out of Marco's grip? With the knowledge that I was killing myself and traumatizing my daughter in the process? Tell me about your daughter, Dr. Patterson said, and I started crying again. I cried through most of that first week. But I also started sleeping without chemicals, eating without vomiting, and on day 7, I called Daisy. Hi, Mama. Her voice was bright, unworried. Guess what? I'm staying with Mr. Nico and he has a really big apartment and he doesn't know how to make mac and cheese. My heart stopped. Who's Mr. Nico, baby? He's Santa's helper. I knew Santa would send someone. Mr. Nico says you're getting better and I can see you soon, and he bought me new shoes because mine had a hole and… Daisy, sweetheart, slow down. Who is this man? He's nice, Mama. He doesn't smile a lot, but he bought me books and he has a lady named Sophia who makes really good pancakes and… Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, shaking her head gently. The call had a time limit. 5 minutes for the first week. I have to go, Daisy girl. I love you so much. I love you too. Get better fast so you can meet Mr. Nico. Bye. The line went dead and I stared at Dr. Reeves. Who the hell is Mr. Nico? Your benefactor arranged appropriate care. The family has been fully vetted and… Is it a man? Is my daughter staying with a strange man? It's temporary, supervised, and completely safe. You need to focus on your recovery, Mrs. Snowden. But how could I focus when my daughter was with Santa's helper? Niccolò Calabrese had never felt more incompetent in his entire life. He could dismantle a rival organization. He could negotiate with cartel leaders. He could order a hit with the emotional investment of ordering coffee. But he could not, apparently, prepare macaroni and cheese without burning it. You have to stir it, Daisy said patiently from her perch on the kitchen counter, swinging her legs. She was wearing the new sneakers he'd bought her, light-up ones she'd stared at through a store window, and watching him with those 2 old eyes. Mama always stirs it. Niccolò stirred the pot grimly. The pasta was clumping. How did one burn pasta that was literally boiling in water? Maybe Sophia should. She has the night off. You said you'd make dinner. Daisy tilted her head. Don't you know how to cook? I know how to make reservations. She giggled, and the sound did something strange to his chest. Made it feel less like armor and more like flesh. He'd spent 3 days figuring out how to talk to a 7-year-old without terrifying her. It turned out the secret was letting her talk and just nodding at appropriate intervals. Mr. Nico? She swung her legs harder. Are you really Santa's helper? He abandoned the pot, it was beyond saving anyway, and turned to face her. What makes you think that? Because I wrote Santa a letter asking him to help Mama, and then you came and Mama went to get better and you're taking care of me. That's what Santa's helpers do. Niccolò had killed men for lesser transgressions than identity fraud, but he found himself unable to correct her. What if I'm just someone who wanted to help? That's what Santa's helpers are. She said it like he was being deliberately obtuse. Are you magic? No. But you fixed everything. Not everything, he thought. Not yet. Marco was handled, but the woman, Frida, she was fragile in ways that money couldn't fix. And this child, this too smart, too brave girl who thought the mafia was the North Pole, she was looking at him like he was capable of miracles. I'm trying, he said finally. How about we order pizza and pretend I cooked it? Daisy grinned, and Niccolò realized with sudden, uncomfortable clarity that he would burn down the entire city if it meant keeping that smile on her face. He pulled out his phone and ordered from the place on Columbus. While they waited, Daisy chattered about her school day, her teacher Miss Rodriguez, the art project they were making. Niccolò listened and realized he was memorizing details he'd never needed before: favorite colors, best friends, fears about spelling tests. Later, after pizza and after Daisy insisted on showing him how to properly tuck someone in, you have to make sure the blankets are tight but not too tight. Niccolò stood in the doorway of the guest room he'd converted for her and watched her sleep. She brought a stuffed rabbit from home, worn and missing an eye. She clutched it now, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her breathing deep and even. Luca appeared at his shoulder. Boss, the surveillance on the mother's building is in place. Marco hasn't been back. The woman's been at Serenity Heights for 7 days. Reports say she's compliant. Good. You want to tell me what we're doing? Niccolò looked at the sleeping child. Keeping a promise. To who? To an 8-year-old boy who'd written a letter that never got answered. To a mother who'd died alone because no one intervened. To the universe that had taken everything and given him nothing but blood and power in return. To someone who needed Santa's helper, Niccolò said quietly. even if he doesn't believe in miracles. Marco Vane lasted exactly 11 days in Philadelphia before greed overrode survival instinct. The problem wasn't the 50,000. The problem was that 50,000 wasn't enough, not when he'd been clearing 3 times that annually from his Upper West Side territory. Not when he'd spent 8 years building a network of desperate women, broken men, and addicts who paid their debts in cash, favors, and storage space for merchandise that moved through the city like blood through veins. The Calabrese family had bought him out. Fine. He'd taken the money, cleared his inventory, vanished like a good little soldier. But something about the whole transaction gnawed at him like a rat in the walls. Niccolo Calabrese didn't make house calls for nobodies. Didn't personally threaten mid-level operators over $8,000 debts. Didn't pay $50,000 to clear a junkie's tab unless that junkie was something more than she appeared. So Marco did what Marco did best. He dug. The shell company that had paid Frida's debt was registered in Delaware. Fortress Financial Solutions, LLC. Incorporation papers filed 3 days before the payment cleared. The company had no website, no business history, no presence beyond a P.O. box and a registered agent who specialized in anonymous corporate structures. Professional. Clean. Expensive. Marco knew people who knew people. He called in favors from a lawyer who owed him, who knew a clerk who handled Calabrese business, who confirmed what Marco suspected. Fortress Financial was a ghost, but the signature on the rehab facility payment matched the consigliere's handwriting. Niccolo Calabrese had personally bankrolled Frida Snowden's recovery. The question was why. Marco spent 3 days in a motel outside Newark, chain-smoking and running scenarios. Maybe she was a long-lost relative. Maybe she'd witnessed something. Maybe she had information, leverage, something worth protecting. Or maybe, and this was the angle that made Marco's pulse quicken, maybe she didn't know what she had. Maybe whatever made her valuable was still in that apartment, still accessible, still his if he moved fast enough. He returned to New York on a Wednesday, his car loaded with enough firepower to make a point and enough cash to disappear permanently if things went sideways. He wasn't stupid. He knew crossing the Calabrese family was suicide. But he also knew that fortune favored the bold, and right now, Frida Snowden represented the only fortune he had left. The apartment building on West 71st looked the same. He'd parked 3 blocks away and walked, keeping his head down, a baseball cap pulled low. The super, old man Chun, was having a cigarette by the service entrance. Marco knew Chun. Had paid him twice to look the other way when Marco's guys moved product through the basement. Thought you left town, Chun said, not quite meeting his eyes. Business brought me back. The Snowden woman in 4B. She's still here. Chen's expression went carefully neutral. Haven't seen her in weeks. Place is dark most nights. The kid. Gone too. Someone came for her, took her stuff. Looked official, like child services maybe. Marco's jaw tightened. Child services meant paperwork, meant traceable movements, meant Daisy Snowden was in the system somewhere. And if Niccolo Calabrese was protecting them, he'd have put them somewhere secure. Somewhere expensive. Somewhere that required resources to access. But resources were what Marco understood. Greed was his native language. He thanked Chun with a $20 bill and walked the 3 blocks back to his car. Inside, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he needed. Tommy Rizzo. Ex-cop turned private investigator, specializing in the kind of investigations that skirted legality and dove straight into felony. Tommy. It's Marco. I need you to find someone for me. I heard you left the city. I'm back. I need locations on a woman and a kid. Frida Snowden and her daughter Daisy. The woman's probably in rehab, high-end. The kid's in protective placement, maybe foster care, maybe private. I need addresses within 48 hours. Marco, if these people are under protection. They're not. It's a favor situation, not a family situation. The protection's unofficial, which means it has gaps. Find the gaps. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. This is going to cost you. How much? 10,000. And if I find out you're lying about the family protection, I'm out and you never heard from me.
Deal.
Marco ended the call and lit another cigarette. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from anticipation. He'd built his empire on knowing when to push and when to fold. This was a push. Frida Snowden might be clean now, might be sober, might think she'd escaped. But Marco knew the truth about leverage. The woman didn't matter. The kid did. Children made excellent motivators. They turned tigers into lambs, made the strong weak, made people do very stupid things to keep them safe. And if Niccolò Calabrese cared enough about Frida Snowden to pay $50,000 and issue personal threats, then he'd care when Marco took what he'd been protecting. Would care enough to negotiate. Would care enough to pay. Marco just had to move before the Don realized the vulture hadn't actually left the territory. Just learned to circle higher, out of sight, waiting for the right moment to descend. He watched the apartment building until dark, memorizing patterns, counting exits, noting which windows had lights and which had been dark for weeks. Somewhere in this city, a woman was learning to be sober and a little girl was learning to trust a stranger who pretended to be Santa's helper. They thought they were safe. They thought someone had saved them. But salvation, Marco knew, was always temporary. And debts, real debts, the kind written in blood and desperation, those never got paid in full. He started the engine and pulled into traffic, a predator who'd tasted weakness and couldn't resist the urge to bite. The hunt was on. I walked out of Serenity Heights on day 30 wearing clothes that actually fit and a clarity that felt like walking on broken glass. Everything was sharper now. Louder. The December cold bit through my coat with precision, the traffic on the street roared instead of hummed, and the city I'd been drowning in for 18 months looked different, harder, brighter, more real. Sobriety wasn't the gentle awakening I'd hoped for. It was brutal and unforgiving, and it made me want to crawl back into the fog. But I didn't. Because Daisy was waiting. Dr. Patterson had prepared me for this. The world doesn't pause while you heal, she'd said during our final session. You're going to walk out of here and feel overwhelmed. That's normal. That's when you use your tools. Tools. I had a 90-day plan, a sponsor's phone number, a prescription for medication that would make the cravings manageable, and absolutely no idea how to face the man who'd paid for all of it. The black car was waiting at the curb, the same one that had brought me here a month ago. But this time, the driver opened the back door and I saw him. Niccolò Calabrese was not what I expected. I'd built an image in my head over the past month, someone older, paternal, probably religious given the whole Santa letter thing. Maybe a wealthy businessman with a charitable streak. But the man in the back seat was young, maybe late 30s, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble and then cracked with violence. A scar bisected his left eyebrow. His suit probably cost more than I'd made in a year when I was still performing. And his eyes. Dark, intense, watching me with an attention that made my skin prickle with something that definitely wasn't fear. Mrs. Snowden. His voice was quiet, controlled. I'm Niccolò. We haven't been formally introduced. I slid into the car because standing on the sidewalk staring at him seemed rude, and because Daisy was somewhere with this man and I needed to understand who he was. You're Mr. Nico. Daisy told me about you. She's an extraordinary child. You should be proud. The words hit harder than they should have. Pride and shame tangled in my chest. Why did you do this? Pay for rehab, take care of Daisy, why would you help people you don't know? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on something outside the window. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. I found your daughter's letter by accident. It reminded me of someone I couldn't help a long time ago. This time I could. That's not an answer. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. No, it's not. The car moved through traffic with the smooth efficiency of money and power. I studied him from the corner of my eye, the expensive watch, the way he held himself like violence was always an option, the careful distance he maintained between us on the leather seat. Nothing about him screamed Santa's helper. Everything about him screamed danger. But he'd saved us. Had paid my debts, protected my daughter, given me a chance I didn't deserve. How much do I owe you? The question came out rougher than I intended. Nothing. That's not how the world works. Nobody pays for a stranger's rehab out of kindness. He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. Consider it an investment in Daisy's future. She deserves a mother who's present. The words were kind, but something in his tone felt like more than philanthropy. Like he was studying me, measuring something, deciding whether I was worth the resources he'd already spent. The attention should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, I felt seen for the first time in years, really seen, not as the tragic widow or the falling down drunk or the burden everyone pitied. I want to see my daughter. Of course. She's been staying at my apartment. Sophia, my housekeeper, has been taking excellent care of her. But Daisy's been asking about you constantly. His apartment. My 7-year-old had been living with this dangerous, beautiful stranger for a month, and I was supposed to just trust that everything was appropriate? The clarity of sobriety made me question everything. I don't understand you, I said quietly. Your interest, your wealth, why you'd care about us. Nothing about this makes sense. He studied me for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind his eyes. Perhaps sense isn't the point. Perhaps some things are worth doing simply because they need to be done. That's still not an answer. I know. This time his smile was real, brief but genuine, and it transformed his face from threatening to devastating. You'll have to get used to that. The car pulled up to a building on the Upper East Side, the kind with a doorman and marble lobby and the weight of old money. Niccolo helped me out, his hands steady, warm, calloused in a way that suggested his wealth wasn't inherited but earned through means I probably didn't want to know about. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished brass. 30 days sober. Clear eyes. Brushed hair. The woman Marcus had married, visible again under the wreckage. Still broken, still scared, but standing. Daisy doesn't know the details, Niccolo said quietly as the elevator climbed. She thinks I'm Santa's helper. That I was sent to take care of you both while you got better. I'd like to keep it that way, if that's acceptable to you. What are you really? He looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw something raw beneath the control. Someone who understands what it's like to watch someone you love disappear into a bottle. The elevator doors opened before I could respond, and then I heard her. Mama. Daisy came running down the hallway, all dark curls and light-up sneakers and joy so pure it knocked the breath from my lungs. I dropped to my knees and caught her, burying my face in her hair, breathing in the vanilla shampoo smell, feeling her small arms squeeze me tight enough to hurt. I missed you so much, she whispered against my neck. Are you all better now? I'm better, baby. I'm so much better. I looked up and found Niccolo watching us from the elevator doorway, his expression carefully neutral except for something in his eyes, longing, maybe, or grief, or recognition of something he'd lost a long time ago. Thank you, I mouthed. He nodded once, then disappeared into the apartment, giving us space, giving us time, giving us the gift of reunion without audience. But I felt his presence anyway, the weight of his attention, the pull of something between us that I didn't have words for. Something that terrified me almost as much as the thought of picking up another drink. I held my daughter and tried not to think about dark eyes and dangerous men and debts that could never be repaid with money. The safe house was supposed to be temporary. 3 days, Niccolo had said. Just until he handled business in Boston and could arrange something more permanent. The apartment was in Brooklyn, nondescript building in Park Slope, 3rd floor with reinforced doors and a security system that looked military grade. Sophia stayed with us during the day, and at night, one of Niccolo's men, a quiet guy named Luca who smiled at Daisy and looked at me like I was made of glass, sat in a car outside. I should have felt safe. Maybe that was my first mistake. Day 43 sober. I was folding laundry in the bedroom while Daisy did homework at the kitchen table, her tongue sticking out in concentration the way it always did when she worked on math problems. Sophia had left an hour ago. Luca was downstairs. The December sun was setting early, painting the apartment in orange and shadow. The sound of glass breaking came from the living room. My body reacted before my brain caught up, adrenaline flooding my system, the kind of clarity that 30 days of sobriety and therapy had taught me not to drown. I moved to the kitchen doorway and saw him. Marco Vane stood in the living room, a crowbar in one hand, having smashed through the window that faced the fire escape. His leather jacket was dusted with glass, his face twisted into something between rage and triumph. "Hello, Frida. Miss me?" I stepped between him and the kitchen, between him and Daisy. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to pour myself a drink and disappear into the fog. But I didn't have that luxury anymore. Didn't have that escape. "Get out." My voice shook but held. "You're not supposed to be here. Neither are you. This isn't your apartment. That's not your furniture. Those aren't your clothes." He took a step closer, glass crunching under his boots. "You're living in a dollhouse paid for by a man you barely know, and you really think this ends well for you?" "Mama." Daisy's small voice from behind me. "Stay in the kitchen, baby. Don't come out here." Marco's smile was a predator's grin. "There's the kid. That's really what I came for anyway. See, I've been doing math, Frida. And the numbers don't add up. Niccolò Calabrese doesn't pay 50 grand for nobodies. Which means you're either something to him, or you will be. Either way, your daughter's my insurance policy." He lunged. 30 days ago, I would have frozen. Would have crumbled. Would have let him take whatever he wanted because I'd been too broken to fight. But sobriety had given me something back. Not strength, not courage exactly, but the desperate clarity of a mother who had already lost too much. I grabbed the heavy glass vase from the side table, the one Sophia had filled with winter flowers, and threw it. My aim was terrible, but it didn't need to be good. Just distracting. Marco ducked, and in that half-second, I yanked Daisy from the kitchen and shoved her toward the bathroom. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Mr. Nico. Call Luca's number on my phone. Go." She ran. My smart, brave girl ran, and I heard the bathroom lock click just as Marco grabbed my arm and spun me around. "Stupid," he hissed, his grip bruising. "You think you can fight me? You think your rich boyfriend's going to save you?" I remembered something Luca had said during one of our conversations, when I'd asked why he carried a gun. "In a fight, there's no such thing as fair. There's only winning or losing." I drove my knee up as hard as I could into Marco's groin. He released me with a howl, doubling over, and I ran for the panic button Niccolò had shown me, a small red switch hidden under the kitchen counter. I slammed my palm against it and prayed it worked, prayed someone was listening, prayed that help was coming. Marco was already recovering, straightening up, his face purple with rage. "You bitch." The apartment door exploded inward. Not Luca. 3 men I didn't recognize, wearing black and moving with the coordinated precision of soldiers. The first one hit Marco with something that looked like a tactical baton, and Marco went down hard. The second secured him with zip ties in under 5 seconds. The third approached me, hands up in a gesture of peace. "Mrs. Snowden, are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to speak, my whole body trembling with adrenaline crash. "Where's your daughter?" "Bathroom. I need to." He nodded and stepped back, and I ran to the bathroom door, knocked the pattern Daisy, and I had practiced just in case. "Baby, it's Mama. It's safe now." The lock clicked and Daisy threw herself into my arms, crying, and I held her while armed men secured the apartment and Marco bled on the floor and my phone started ringing with Niccolò's number flashing on the screen. I answered with shaking hands. "Frida." His voice was tight, dangerous, barely controlled. "Are you hurt? Is Daisy?" "We're okay. We're both okay." He got in through the fire escape window. "Your men got here so fast." "I'm 15 minutes out. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming." The line went dead. One of the men was hauling Marco to his feet, and Marco's eyes found mine, still defiant even with blood running from his split lip. "This isn't over. You think he'll protect you forever? You think?" The man holding him hit him again, efficiently, and Marco went quiet. I sat on the floor with Daisy in my lap, my back against the bathroom door, and felt the difference between who I'd been 43 days ago and who I was now. That woman would have let Marco take Daisy. Would have been too broken, too drunk, too defeated to fight. This woman had fought. Had won. Had kept her daughter safe. But as I looked at Marco's unconscious form being dragged from the apartment, I understood something Dr. Patterson had tried to tell me. Getting sober wasn't the end of the fight. It was just the beginning. And the man racing across the city to reach us, the dangerous stranger who'd saved us once already, was about to show me exactly how violent salvation could be. I held Daisy tighter and waited for Niccolò Calabrese to arrive, knowing that whatever happened next would be written in blood. Niccolò arrived like a storm breaking. I heard the cars before I saw them, multiple engines, tires screaming to a halt, doors slamming with military precision. Then footsteps, fast and heavy, taking the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator. The apartment door was already open, hanging crooked on its hinges from where his security team had kicked it in, and when Niccolò appeared in the doorway, I barely recognized him. This wasn't the controlled man in the expensive suit who'd picked me up from rehab. This was something elemental. Dangerous. His jacket was gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, and his eyes swept the room with a cold assessment of violence about to be unleashed. They found me on the floor with Daisy, registered that we were alive, and something in his expression shifted from fury to something darker. Relief that looked like rage. "Take them out," he said quietly to Luca, who'd appeared at his shoulder. "Downstairs. Secure car. Now." "Boss, Marco's crew is 2 minutes out." Tommy Rizzo confirmed 4 men, armed, coming for the package. Package. They meant Daisy. My daughter was a package to these people. Niccolò's jaw tightened. "Then we have 2 minutes. Move them." Luca moved toward us, but I shook my head. "I'm not leaving you here to." "Frida." Niccolò's voice cut through my protest like a blade. "This is not a negotiation. You fought to keep her safe. Now let me finish it." He was right. I knew he was right. But something in my chest twisted at the thought of him facing whatever was coming while we ran. This man who'd saved us, who'd paid for my sobriety, who'd held my daughter's hand and learned to make pancakes and looked at me like I was worth protecting. "Come on, Mrs. Snowden." Luca's hand was gentle on my arm. "We need to go." I stood, Daisy clinging to me, and as Luca guided us toward the back stairs, I looked back. Niccolò was already moving, barking orders to his men, positioning them by windows and doorways with the efficiency of someone who'd orchestrated violence many times before. Our eyes met for a half-second. "Don't die," I said. His mouth curved in something too bitter to be a smile. "Not planning on it." Then we were in the stairwell, and I heard the first gunshot. Luca pushed us down faster, his body between us and the sounds of chaos erupting above. More gunshots, shouting, something heavy crashing. Daisy had her face buried in my shoulder, her small body shaking, and I counted steps to keep from screaming. 23 stairs. Turn. 19 more. Turn. 13 to the ground floor. The back exit opened into an alley where 2 more men waited by a black SUV. They hustled us inside, Luca climbing in after, and the driver pulled away from the curb with controlled speed, fast enough to matter, slow enough not to draw attention. "What's happening up there?" I asked. Luca's face was grim. "The boss is handling it." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." I held Daisy and listened to the radio chatter on Luca's earpiece. Codes I didn't understand, numbers that meant nothing to me, voices clipped and professional even as violence unfolded in real time. Then, "Man down. Boss is hit. South window. Suspect is." The radio cut to static, then silence. "Luca." My voice broke on his name. "He's fine. He's fine. The boss doesn't go down easy." But his hand moved to his weapon, and I saw the lie in the gesture. The SUV took us to another building, taller, more secure, with an underground garage and armed men at every entrance. They moved us to a penthouse that I recognized from Daisy's descriptions, Niccolò's apartment, the place she'd stayed for a month. Sophia was there, gathering Daisy into her arms, speaking soft Italian, offering hot chocolate and comfort. I stood by the window overlooking Central Park and waited. 40 minutes passed like hours. Then the elevator chimed and I turned, hope and dread tangled in my chest. Niccolo walked out supported by 2 of his men, his shirt soaked with blood, his face pale but set in hard lines. He was alive, breathing, moving under his own power despite the crimson spreading across his left shoulder. "Get the doctor," someone said, and there was movement, organized chaos, professionals handling a crisis they'd clearly handled before. But Niccolo's eyes found mine across the room. "You're okay," he said. Not a question. A statement he needed to confirm. I crossed to him without thinking, my hands reaching for his face, his neck, needing to touch him and confirm he was real and alive and here. "You're bleeding. You need to sit down. You need. Marco's dead." His voice was rough, tired. His crew scattered. "It's over. You were shot. Grazed. I've had worse." He swayed slightly, and I wrapped my arm around his waist, trying to support some of his weight even though he was twice my size. "He came at you. I wasn't going to let him." I know. My throat was tight, words inadequate for the gratitude and fear and something else churning in my chest. "Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet." He looked down at me, and despite the pain etched in his face, despite the blood, his focus was absolute. "You need to understand what I am. What I do. The world I pulled you into by helping you. I don't care. You should. You saved my daughter. You saved me. I don't care if you're the devil himself." His laugh was harsh, breathless. "Close enough." The doctor arrived, a woman with efficient hands and no questions about bullet wounds. She guided Niccolo to the couch, started cutting away his shirt, and I stepped back to give her room. But his hand caught mine, held tight enough to hurt. "Stay," he said quietly. So I stayed. I held his hand while the doctor worked, while he gritted his teeth through the pain he insisted wasn't bad, while Daisy slept in the other room and Sophia made phone calls and Luca coordinated cleanup of a crime scene I'd never see. I stayed because this dangerous man had stepped between me and a bullet. Because he'd killed for us without hesitation. Because somewhere in the past 43 days of sobriety and survival, he'd become something more than my benefactor. He'd become mine to protect too. "It's done," the doctor said finally, applying the last bandage. "You'll need to rest for at least a week. No strenuous activity. The wound was clean, no major damage, but you lost blood." Niccolo nodded, dismissed her with a gesture, and then we were alone in the too quiet apartment with the weight of everything that had happened. "I killed him," Niccolo said into the silence. "Marco." I put 2 bullets in his chest and watched him bleed out on that apartment floor. "Does that frighten you?" It should have. The woman I'd been 6 weeks ago would have been terrified. But that woman was drowning. This woman was sober, clear-headed, and looking at the man who'd shielded her with his body. "No," I said honestly. "It doesn't." His eyes searched mine for a long moment. Then he pulled me closer with his good arm, pressed his forehead to mine, and breathed like he'd been holding it since the moment he'd found me on that bathroom floor. "I would do it again," he whispered. "For you. For her. I'd burn the whole city down." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. Christmas morning arrived quiet and white, snow dusting Central Park like powdered sugar on a cake I'd never been able to afford. I woke in Niccolo's guest room, our guest room now, I supposed, since he'd made it clear we weren't leaving, to the sound of Daisy's delighted gasp from down the hall. She discovered the presents Sophia had arranged under the tree sometime in the night. Not the excessive pile of guilt gifts I'd feared, but thoughtful things, art supplies, books, a new winter coat that actually fit, and tucked in the back, a framed photo of the 3 of us that Luca must have taken when we weren't looking. Me, Daisy, and Niccolo at the kitchen table, teaching him how to play Go Fish. We looked like a family. The thought terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Niccolo was still asleep when I checked on him, his face peaceful in a way it never was when conscious. The bandage on his shoulder was clean, changed by the doctor who'd visited yesterday. 51 days sober. 1 week since Marco had bled out on a Brooklyn apartment floor. 3 days since I'd admitted to myself that I was falling for a man who killed people and somehow still made my daughter laugh. Mama. Daisy appeared in the doorway, clutching her new sketchbook. Can we wake up Mr. Nico? I want to show him what Santa brought. I glanced at the man in question, found his eyes already open, dark and alert despite the early hour and the injury. I'm awake, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Show me what you got, little one. She launched into an animated description of every gift, climbing carefully onto the bed beside him, and I watched him listen with the same intense focus he gave everything. Like her happiness mattered more than empires or blood debts or the fact that he should be resting. After breakfast, Sophia's pastries and coffee that tasted like redemption, Daisy settled on the floor with her art supplies and I found myself alone with Nico low on the couch, our legs nearly touching, the city stretching out beyond the windows like a promise. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. I'd been waiting for this. The other shoe dropping. The revelation that would make sense of everything. Okay. He reached into his shirt pocket with his good arm and pulled out a piece of pink construction paper, worn soft at the creases like he'd folded and unfolded it many times. My breath caught as he handed it to me. Dear Santa, my mom drinks every night, help her. Daisy's handwriting. Daisy's plea. The letter I'd never seen. She told me about the special box, I whispered, the pieces clicking into terrible, beautiful place. She said men in suits used it. She thought it was Santa's mailbox. It was a dead drop for the Calabrese family. My family. My organization. He watched me carefully, gauging my reaction. She put this letter in a box meant for criminal communications. My courier brought it to me instead of the payment I was expecting. I stared at the pink paper, at my daughter's desperate words, at the miracle of her innocent mistake. You're not just wealthy. You're Mafia. The Calabrese family. I'm the Don. He said it matter-of-factly, like admitting he owned a restaurant chain instead of a criminal empire. Everything I did, paying your debts, the rehab, protecting you, it started because this letter reminded me of my mother. She drank herself to death when I was 12. I wrote letters too, to God, to saints, to anyone who might listen. No one answered. My hand found his, fingers threading together. You answered, Daisy. I couldn't save my mother. Maybe I could save hers. The weight of it settled between us, the grief that had driven him, the addiction that had nearly destroyed me, the child who'd bridged the gap between our broken pieces with pink construction paper and belief in magic. I'm a criminal, Frida. I've killed men. I'll kill again if someone threatens what's mine. His grip tightened. You need to understand that. What it means to be with me. The danger. The secrets. The life. 51 days sober had taught me clarity. Had taught me to see things as they were, not as I wished them to be. And what I saw was a man who'd murdered for us without hesitation, who'd taken a bullet meant for me, who'd spent a month learning to care for a 7-year-old because she needed him. I'm an alcoholic, I said quietly. I'll be in recovery for the rest of my life. Some days will be harder than others. Some days I'll want to drink so badly it feels like dying. You need to understand that. What it means to be with me. The meetings. The sponsors. The constant vigilance. His laugh was soft, surprised. We're quite a pair. Terrifying, really. Mama? Mr. Nico. Daisy appeared beside the couch, her new sketchbook open to a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands, a woman with yellow hair, a man with dark hair and broad shoulders, and a small girl between them. Above them, she'd written in careful letters, my family. Nicolo's breath caught. I felt it in the way his hand tightened in mine, in the way his whole body went still like he was afraid moving might shatter the moment. Is that us? He asked, his voice rough with something that might have been tears if men like him allowed themselves to cry. Daisy nodded seriously. Santa sent you to help Mama. But I think maybe he sent you to stay too. Can you stay, Mr. Nico? Can you be my dad? The silence stretched for a heartbeat. 2. I looked at Nicolo and saw the 8-year-old boy who'd written letters that went unanswered. Saw the man who'd built an empire on violence and control because no one had protected him when he needed it. Saw the stranger who'd become my daughter's hero and somehow, impossibly, mine too. "I can stay," he said quietly. "If your mother will let me." Daisy turned those ancient eyes on me, waiting. 51 days sober. One dead lone shark. A dangerous man offering forever. And my daughter asking for the one gift I couldn't buy or manufacture or promise. A family. Safety. Someone who stays. "He can stay," I whispered. Daisy launched herself at us both, her arms wrapping around our necks, and Nicolo caught her with his good arm while his other hand stayed locked in mine. We sat like that, 3 broken people holding each other together, while snow fell on the city and Christmas morning stretched into afternoon. Later, after Daisy had fallen asleep in her room surrounded by new books, Nicolo pulled me close on the couch and pressed his lips to my temple. "I don't believe in Santa Claus or miracles," he murmured against my hair. "But I believe in this. In you. In her. In whatever this is we're building." What are we building? Something worth protecting. Something worth dying for. He tilted my face up to meet his eyes. Something worth staying alive for too. I kissed him then, soft and careful and full of promises neither of us knew how to keep but were desperate to try. He tasted like coffee and redemption, like violence wrapped in tenderness, like the answer to a prayer I hadn't known I was allowed to say. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Merry Christmas, Frida." "Merry Christmas, Nicolo." Outside, the city that had swallowed my husband and nearly drowned me glittered with lights and possibility. Inside, a little girl slept safe and warm, her letter to Santa clutched in the hands of a man who didn't believe in magic but had somehow become it anyway. 51 days sober. One dangerous love. A family assembled from broken pieces and pink construction paper. It wasn't perfect. We weren't fixed. The world outside was still brutal and unforgiving, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new reasons to doubt. But today, Christmas morning in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, we had each other. And for the first time in 2 years, that felt like enough. Like more than enough. Like everything.